Black Belt asked a female veteran to fight as a joke, but what she did next shocked the whole gym. When Jake Mercer, a confident black belt and local gym legend, noticed a quiet woman quietly warming up in the corner, he saw an easy opportunity for a bit of fun, a joke at her expense to entertain the crowd. What began as a careless challenge quickly turned into one of the most unforgettable moments in the gym's history. Because sometimes, those who say little carry the heaviest stories and the fiercest strength. Jake was about to discover why you should never judge someone by their silence or underestimated presence. In just minutes, this female veteran would shatter his arrogance, reveal a hidden legacy, and teach a powerful lesson in respect that would echo far beyond the gym walls. And before I forget, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. The gym didn't look like much from the outside, a rust-red building tucked between a chain-link fence and a convenience store. Inside, though, it pulsed with noise and heat. Pads thudded, sneakers squeaked, and instructions barked out from the head coach, a man everyone simply called Rico. This was Saturday sparring, invitation only. Rico called it controlled chaos, though it was more ego management than anything else. Fighters came to prove themselves, not to learn. And among them were regulars, off-duty cops, local MMA hopefuls, 2 tattooed bouncers from the west side, and of course, the one they all circled around, Tyson the Belt Mercer, a regional champion with 5 black belts, more swagger than sense, and a deep love for humiliating newcomers. Which is why everyone noticed when she walked in. She didn't announce herself. No duffel bag, no loud questions, just a woman in her late 20s, lean, composed, standing near the entrance with her hands folded behind her back. Combat boots, faded jeans, black hoodie, hair pulled into a tight, high bun. There was a burn mark on her sleeve, like something seared through once and never got repaired. "Ma'am," Rico said, eyes narrowing as he stepped off the mat. "This ain't the cardio class. You lost." She shook her head once. "Calm, direct. Here to observe," she said quietly. "If that's allowed." Rico grunted. "Suit yourself." And that would have been the end of it, except Mercer spotted her. "Yo, Rico," he called, tossing off his gloves, grinning. "We letting spectators now? Or is she here to learn how to throw a punch?" Laughter rippled around the gym. She didn't react. Not visibly. But her eyes followed Mercer with surgical focus. Not amusement. Not anger. Something quieter. Assessing. "Come on," Mercer said, stepping closer, wiping sweat from his brow. "You got the boots. You got the scars. What are you? Former ROTC? Weekend warrior?" "Something like that," she said. More laughter. Mercer tilted his head. "You ever spar?" "Once or twice." That was when Rico noticed something strange. The way her stance shifted, imperceptible to most. He'd seen it before, though. Years back. Afghanistan. A woman on a dirt road outside Kabul. Rifle cradled low. Body still as stone, but eyes always moving. Tactical posture. "You want to try?" Mercer said. "We don't hit hard. Not unless we're disrespected." Rico turned toward her, about to step in, but paused. Something in her expression had changed. Not fear. Not pride. A stillness. A switch being flipped. She looked Mercer in the eye. "Okay." That's all she said. Just that one word. And Rico knew, before the gloves came out, before the crowd circled close, before the gym's rhythm shifted, that this wasn't going to end the way Mercer thought. This woman wasn't here to prove anything. She was here to remember who she used to be. Rico watched the gloves hit the mat. Mercer, all showboating grins and swagger, tossed an extra pair toward the woman. She caught them without looking down. No flinch. No fumble. Just clean reflex. "What's your name?" Mercer asked, tightening his wraps. She paused. "Call me Reyes." Not Lena. Not ma'am. Just Reyes. Like it was still on a stitched patch somewhere. Like it had weight. Rico narrowed his eyes. He hadn't heard that tone in years. Clipped, measured, the kind used by people who'd seen more than they could ever say. The others barely noticed. They gathered close, pulling out phones. This was Mercer's thing. A little sparring with a civilian, all in good fun. But this felt different, even if they didn't know why. Protective gear? Rico asked quietly, half hoping she'd take the offer. No need, Reyes replied. Calm, flat. Mercer chuckled. Damn, I love this already. Rico hesitated before giving the nod. He didn't like it. But something told him this wasn't going to be about bruises or blood. It was going to be about silence, the kind that followed when assumptions crumbled. They took their positions. Mercer bounced on his toes, loose and cocky. Reyes just stood still. He threw a light jab, playful, testing the waters. She didn't react. Not yet. Second jab, closer to her cheek. Still no movement. But Rico noticed something. Her hands. They weren't clenched. They were relaxed. Fluid. Like she'd been trained not to waste energy. Mercer smirked. You gonna dance or freeze? Reyes finally moved. A single sidestep. No fanfare. Just smooth, precise adjustment, like she was repositioning for a cleaner shot. Mercer came in for real then. A combo. Left, right, low kick. Enough to rattle a rookie. Reyes slipped the jab, ducked the hook, stepped just outside the range of the kick. All with surgical grace. No panic. No tension. The crowd murmured. Mercer backed up, grinned slightly tighter. Okay. She's got footwork. Cool. But Rico saw the flicker behind his eyes. He was realizing something wasn't right. This wasn't beginner's luck. This wasn't instinct. This was training. Deep training. The kind that leaves grooves in your bones long after the war is over. Mercer lunged again, this time sharper. Reyes ducked, shifted her weight low, and tapped the inside of his wrist with 2 fingers. Gentle, almost casual, and suddenly Mercer's balance broke. He stumbled. Recovered fast, but the crowd saw it. So did Rico. She hadn't hit him. She had redirected him. That's what made his stomach turn. Only a few kinds of people train that way. Not to hurt, but to neutralize. She wasn't fighting. She was measuring. There was a shift in the room. Not loud. Not sudden. Just noticed. Like someone turned the volume down on the world. The laughter from earlier had vanished. Phones were still up, but no one was chuckling anymore. Because Mercer, cocky, 5-belt Mercer, was breathing heavier now. Not from exertion. From something older. Unease. Confusion. Across from him, Reyes hadn't changed. Still that quiet center. No bouncing. No show. Her eyes tracked Mercer like a rangefinder. Shoulders low. Hands open. And then came the strike. Mercer lunged in with speed. A real hit. A hard right that could break a jaw. Reyes turned. Just enough. The punch skimmed air. And in one seamless motion, not flashy, not violent, she stepped into his blind side, palm bracing the side of his head, and swept his rear leg. Mercer hit the mat. Hard. Not flailing, not dazed, just down. Pinned by the weight of his own momentum. A gasp rippled through the gym. Reyes didn't move. She just stood over him, calm, controlled. Her expression hadn't changed since she entered the building. Mercer blinked up at her, confused. Then angry. He rolled to his knees and stood, snorting a breath, brushing chalk off his shorts. Lucky shot, he muttered. Reyes tilted her head slightly. Not smug. Just curious. Like she was reading a file she already knew the ending to. I didn't strike you, she said. Mercer squinted. What? I redirected you. Rico exhaled slowly. That confirmed it. That word, redirected. That was military vernacular. Specifically, combatives training. Not civilian martial arts. Not dojo talk. But elite, field-taught control tactics. The bouncers stopped smirking. Mercer came again. No more games. 2 fast punches, a knee aimed midsection. Reyes blocked the punches with a subtle elbow rotation and caught the knee with her forearm. She moved sideways, hand barely brushing the back of Mercer's neck, and used his momentum again. He went down a second time. This time harder. His shoulder hit the mat first. It wasn't enough to injure, but it was enough to stun. Reyes stepped back. Still silent. Still watching. Still measuring. The crowd wasn't filming anymore. They were watching. Breaths held. Something was wrong, or maybe right, in a way they didn't understand. Who the hell are you? Mercer asked, on his knees, voice now sharper, not playful anymore. Reyes didn't answer. Instead, she slowly pulled back her right sleeve. And that's when the first scar came into view. Jagged, raised, a deep burn across the inside of her forearm. Old, healed, but unmistakable. And just above it, barely visible under faded ink, was the outline of a unit tattoo. Faded. A black trident. Someone in the back gasped. Rico swallowed. She wasn't RODC. She wasn't weekend warrior. She wasn't even army. She was something else. The room fell completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The black trident on her forearm wasn't fresh. The ink had faded, blurred by time, smoke, and scar tissue. But it didn't matter. Anyone who'd spent time near the military knew what it meant. Navy SEAL. And for the few who truly understood, they knew that no one just wears that mark. It's earned in places most men never return from. It's carved into the bones by drown-proofing drills, by bone-chilling surf torture, by years of missions no one could talk about. Reyes didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The tattoo said everything. Mercer's face shifted. He looked at the mark, then at her, then back again. His hands were still clenched, but not from readiness. From recalibration. He'd assumed she was decoration. Now he wasn't sure he wanted to be in the same ring. One of the younger fighters, a lanky guy named Devin who always asked too many questions, finally spoke. Wait, is that real? Like real? Reyes lowered her sleeve again. No drama. No pride. Doesn't matter, she said quietly. But it did. To every soul in that room, it mattered more than they could process. Not because she wanted to prove anything, but because she hadn't. Because she could have walked in with that tattoo exposed, arms crossed, boasting credentials. She didn't. She came in quiet. And when pushed, she answered not with fury, but with precision. Rico stepped closer now. He felt the knot in his chest, the one that only rose when something sacred was happening, when the past brushed up against the present in a way you couldn't fake. Seal, he asked softly. She met his eyes. Nodded once. Out now, she said. Medical discharge. Fire in Kynner. We lost 3. That was all she said. That was enough. Kynner. Afghanistan. A name that still echoed through the corridors of VA hospitals and therapists' offices. Mercer swallowed hard. I didn't know. She looked at him. Calm. Not bitter. But clear. You didn't ask. The gym was still frozen. Phones were lowered. The guys in the back leaned against the wall, processing what had just shifted. Rico felt something else stir inside him. A memory of a sandstorm. A letter he never answered. A face he hadn't seen in 15 years. He stepped forward and raised a hand toward Reyes. Not to shake, but in quiet, wordless acknowledgement. A small nod of respect. She returned the nod. Then, she stepped off the mat. Not triumphant. Not smug. Just done. She stepped off the mat like she had stepped off a plane years ago, shoulders squared, breathing steady, eyes scanning for exits she didn't need anymore. No one tried to stop her. Not Mercer. Not the guys who had laughed. Not the ones who'd been recording. They just moved aside. Reyes walked to the far end of the gym, where a battered water cooler wheezed in the corner. She filled a cracked paper cup, took a slow sip, and leaned against the wall, her back to the room. Her hoodie had slipped off her shoulder slightly. The burn scar was visible now, raw and pink along the collarbone, shaped like flame. Some looked away, ashamed they hadn't seen her sooner. Others stared, trying to imagine what it had taken to survive whatever had carved that into flesh. Rico approached carefully, like he was walking into a memory. His voice was low. Kynner, he said again. You were there in 19? She nodded once. I was still active, he said. Army side. FOB Bullhorn. We heard the chatter that week. Fire team pinned in a valley. Evac went sideways. No names. Just rumors. Then silence. Her lips pressed into a thin line. We didn't make it out together, she said. I dragged them halfway. Fire took the rest. Rico didn't speak. He just stood beside her, not touching, not crowding, just present. Like someone who knew the sound a Black Hawk made when it didn't come back. After a long beat, she spoke again. I don't usually come to places like this. He smiled faintly. We're not usually this lucky. She looked down at the paper cup in her hand. He didn't mean it. The disrespect. Guys like that, they don't see people. They see patterns. And you didn't flinch, Rico said. That's what shook him more than the fall. "I've already fallen further than this, Matt," she said. And I didn't stay down. Behind them, the gym was whispering. The fight was over, but the story had just begun. Words passed quickly. Seal, burn scars, redirected him without hitting, tattoo, Hunter. Mercer sat on the bench now, staring at the floor. He wasn't angry. Not anymore. He looked like someone remembering something he thought he'd buried, like watching a real soldier redefine the word fighter. Rico cleared his throat. "You still train?" "Not in a while." "You should," he said. "You moved like muscle memory was still breathing." She gave a soft, dry chuckle. "That's all it is now. Memory." And then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a simple object. Small, worn, a silver pendant, rectangular, dull, engraved with 4 names. Barely legible. Dog tag silver. She held it for a second, rubbing her thumb over the first name. Then tucked it away. No one else saw it. But Rico did. And he understood. This wasn't about fighting. It never had been. It was about honoring ghosts. The silence didn't fade quickly. It lingered like smoke after a fire. Something you could still smell even when the flames were gone. Reyes finished her water and placed the empty paper cup on the edge of the cooler. Her movements were deliberate, quiet. Like every action still passed through a filter of discipline. Mercer approached slowly. No entourage. No audience now. Just him, shoulders lower, pride deflated, eyes no longer shining with that self-assured gleam. He looked younger now, and smaller, as if the illusion had been broken and all that remained was the man underneath. "I didn't know," he said, his voice low. Reyes didn't turn to face him. "You weren't supposed to." Mercer nodded. "Still, I shouldn't have joked." She turned slightly, just enough to glance at him over her shoulder. "You didn't joke. You assumed." That hit harder than the fall. He shifted uncomfortably, trying to find footing in a conversation where every word felt like a landmine. "Why come here? A place like this?" Reyes finally looked at him. Her expression wasn't angry, just tired. "Some of us don't come back in pieces you can see," she said. "We try places. See if anything still feels solid under our feet." She didn't say it like a speech. She said it like a fact. Like someone who'd walked into dozens of rooms and left just as quietly. Mercer let the silence sit. Then, hesitantly, "You were good. I mean scary good." She shook her head. "I wasn't here to be good." He frowned. "Then what?" "To see if the part of me that still knew how to move hadn't died with the rest." The weight of that hung heavy. Mercer looked down, then up. "You still have it." "No," she said. "It still has me." Across the gym, Rico stood with arms crossed, watching, not intruding, just bearing witness. A few younger fighters gathered near him, whispering, "Is she really Seal? What was that move she used? Why'd she let him get 2 swings in?" Rico hushed them gently with a raised hand. "You don't ask questions like that, boys," he said. "You earn answers." They fell silent. Mercer took a breath. "I've spent years in places like this. Fighting. Winning. I thought I knew what power looked like." "And now?" she asked. He looked her in the eye. "Now I know it doesn't shout." Reyes offered no reply, only the faintest nod. And somehow, that meant more than any handshake or apology. From behind, someone snapped a photo. Not of the fight. Not of her tattoo. Just of Reyes, standing by the water cooler, shoulder scar visible, hands in her pockets. The quiet presence of someone who'd survived more than she'd ever say. It would be posted online by nightfall. It wouldn't go viral. But for everyone who'd been in that gym, it would be unforgettable. That night, Reyes sat alone on the worn wooden bench of her small apartment. The city's distant hum seeped through cracked windows, muffled and indistinct, like a low tide pulling away. Inside, the silence was dense, the kind that settles after storms, thick with memory and regret. The weight of the day's events pressed against her chest, but she didn't try to push it away. She welcomed it. It was familiar. Her fingers traced the edges of a photo on her nightstand. Old, creased, fading at the corners. A unit portrait from years ago, all of them in worn camouflage, faces weathered by sun and war, eyes fierce yet haunted. For names were scrawled faintly on the back. Brennan, Torres, McKinley, Alvarez. the same names engraved on the dog tag pendant she kept hidden beneath her shirt. She exhaled slowly, a breath filled with ghosts. They had been more than teammates, more than brothers and sisters in arms. They had been family, a family forged in sand and sweat, bonded in moments when trust wasn't just an ideal, but the difference between life and death. The burn scar on her left shoulder throbbed lightly beneath the fabric of her shirt, a raw reminder of the fire that had taken so much, that had taken them. It was a souvenir she wore like armor and penance. The scar wasn't just a mark of pain. It was a story, a testament to survival. Reaching for her dog tags, she let them slip through her fingers like cold metal rain. Each name a memory, a voice, a promise broken. Her journal lay open on the small table beside her, pages worn and filled with half-written letters she never sent. The words were raw, honest, and fragmented, a record of loss, guilt, and the endless search for peace. We fight wars no one hears about. We carry ghosts that never leave. We keep moving, because stillness means surrender. A sharp knock broke the silence. She stiffened, not expecting visitors. Her hand instinctively went to the knife she kept hidden beneath the couch cushion, a habit born from years of necessity. But it was only Rico, standing in the doorway, hands full of 2 steaming cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this," he said softly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. She relaxed, a faint smile touching her lips. Rico was the first person she'd let see this side of her, the side that didn't wear combat boots or carry scars like trophies, but carried quiet strength in the spaces between words. They sat together on the threadbare couch, no need for small talk. The room held a respectful stillness, 2 people sharing space and history without the pressure of explanation. "Mercer's a good kid," Rico finally said after a long pause. "He needed to see you today, to realize there's more to strength than he's been shown." Reyes nodded, her eyes distant. "Sometimes it takes a fall to remind people what strength really looks like." Rico smiled gently. "You made them remember." She looked down at her hands, the veins like faint rivers beneath skin that had seen too much. "I didn't come here to teach. I came to find myself again." Rico's gaze softened. "You found more than that." Outside, the city lights flickered, distant and indifferent. Inside, 2 souls bore a weight few could understand, yet both carried it with unspoken dignity. Because battles aren't always fought with fists or weapons. Sometimes they're fought in silence, in memories, in scars, in the quiet reclaiming of who you are after everything you've lost. And sometimes, the greatest victories don't come with noise or applause, but in being seen, truly seen, for the warrior and the human beneath. The morning after the sparring match, the gym was quieter than usual. The usual sounds, the echoing thuds of gloves against pads, the rhythmic grunts of fighters pushing their limits, had been replaced by a subdued, almost reverent hush. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath, still digesting what had unfolded. The regulars shuffled around with something new, an unspoken respect. Eyes that once glanced sideways at Reyes with skepticism now lingered, tracing the line of her posture, the calm precision in her movements. Some cast quick looks toward the corner where she had stood so still, so unyielding. Tyson the Belt, Mercer arrived early, his typical swagger noticeably tempered. Gone was the cocky grin, replaced by a cautious humility. He made his way to Rico, who was behind the front desk, organizing gear. "Do you think she'll come back?" Mercer asked quietly, his voice carrying a hint of genuine curiosity. Rico paused, considering. "She's not here for showmanship. If she returns, it'll be on her terms. Nobody pushes her." The gym door swung open once again, and Reyes stepped inside. This time, her black hoodie was zipped up to her chin, hiding the tattoo and burn scars beneath its fabric. Her movements were deliberate, controlled. She gave Rico a brief nod, a silent acknowledgement, and he responded with a small, approving smile. Instead of jumping into the sparring ring, Reyes settled herself on the edge of the mats. From her bag, she pulled out a small, battered notebook. Its pages were filled with intricate sketches and detailed notes, diagrams of maneuvers, maps, tactical observations, all evidence of a life far beyond what anyone in the gym could fully grasp. Several fighters, drawn by curiosity, lingered nearby, their initial hesitation giving way to quiet intrigue. Jake, a younger fighter with fresh eyes and an eager spirit, finally broke the silence. "Hey, Reyes, can I ask you something?" His voice was tentative. She looked up, meeting his gaze with steady calm. "Go ahead. What was it like? Your missions? I mean for you." The question hung in the air, delicate and heavy. Reyes took a moment before answering. "It's nothing like the movies," she said softly. "No glory. No crowds cheering. Just focus. Discipline. Sometimes loss. Sometimes silence." Jake nodded slowly, trying to comprehend a world so distant from his own. "You don't talk about it much," he said. "Because the silence is louder," Reyes replied. "Some stories aren't mine to tell." The mood in the gym had shifted dramatically, from derision and mockery to deep respect and understanding. The hard edges softened, replaced by a communal awareness of something greater. Mercer approached again, this time carrying his gloves. He held them loosely, the challenge in his eyes replaced by something more genuine. "Want to spar? No jokes. Just practice." Reyes considered the offer. Then she nodded. They faced each other on the mat, but this time it wasn't about ego or proving dominance. It was a shared ritual, a conversation through movement, a silent exchange between warriors. Their sparring was measured and precise. Neither wasted energy nor moved with reckless abandon. Each strike, block, and step was deliberate, an echo of deep training and hard-earned discipline. There was no anger, no need to prove anything, just respect. After several rounds, they both stepped back, breathing steady but heavy. Mercer looked at Reyes, his voice quiet but sincere. "Thank you." "For what?" she asked. "For reminding me what real strength is." In that moment, the gym wasn't just a place to fight or compete. It had become a space where past and present met, where respect was reclaimed not through violence or noise, but through presence, humility, and truth. And somewhere in the silence, a lesson was learned, one that would ripple through the gym long after the day was done. The days that followed the sparring match marked a subtle but profound shift in the rhythm of the gym. Reyes no longer slipped through the doors unnoticed or unacknowledged. Conversations softened and paused when she entered. Eyes, once dismissive or curious, now traced her with quiet respect. The atmosphere itself changed, the usual raucous energy replaced by a more thoughtful, reverent hum. Even Mercer was different. The man who had once been the loudest, most brash voice in the room had grown quieter. No longer the showman eager to humiliate the newcomer, he now watched her movements closely, not to mock, but to understand. To appreciate the weight behind each step she took, the purpose behind every subtle motion. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and spilled golden light across the mats, Mercer approached Reyes. The gym was alive with the sounds of punching bags swinging, gloves tapping, and trainers calling out instructions. But in that moment, there was a calm bubble between them, a quiet that held something more. "Mind if I ask you something?" Mercer's voice was tentative, stripped of bravado. "Ask what?" Reyes responded, her tone steady, inviting. "How do you keep going? After everything you've been through?" Reyes studied him for a moment, the weight of his question settling between them like the dust motes dancing in the fading light. "You don't keep going because it's easy," she said finally, her voice low but unwavering. "You keep going because you have to." She paused, as if sifting through memories too heavy for words. "Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't the ones against others," she continued. "They're the ones inside. The battles that don't leave bruises or scars you can see. They're fought in silence, in darkness, when no one's watching." Mercer nodded slowly, the bravado stripped away to reveal something honest and raw. "Yeah, I get that now." Around them, the gym buzzed with activity, but between those two, an unspoken understanding had formed. It was built on respect, pain, and survival, a shared language spoken not through words but through presence. Reyes glanced toward a corner of the gym where a faded photograph once hung, a unit portrait of her and her teammates. The photo had been taken down weeks before, replaced now by a simple, framed quote painted in black letters on a white background. Strength isn't loud. It's steady. For Reyes, those words carried the weight of years. Years of fighting battles that no one outside her world could understand. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Not for the scars or the tattoos. Not for the fights or the skills. But for the quiet resilience that had carried her through it all. In that moment, surrounded by the echo of fists and feet against mats, the gym was no longer just a place to test physical limits. It had become a sanctuary where strength was honored in its truest form, steady, humble, and unyielding. Morning light filtered softly through the cracked blinds of Reyes's small apartment, casting long, gentle shadows across the modest room. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled faintly with the distant sounds of the city waking. A low hum of traffic, the occasional murmur of footsteps on the pavement below. The quiet settled around her like a familiar blanket, but inside, a storm of memories stirred. Reyes sat at her worn kitchen table, fingers lightly tracing the edges of a faded photograph resting in her palm. The image was creased and softened by years, a unit portrait frozen in time. Faces sunburnt and stern, eyes locked in defiant determination. For names etched deeply in her memory: Brennan, Torres, McKinley, Alvarez. Names engraved on the dog tag she wore always beneath her shirt, close to her heart. Her fingertips lingered over the faces, each a story of brotherhood and sacrifice, a bond forged in the harshest crucibles. The photo was more than an image. It was a testament to those who never returned, to promises kept in silence, to ghosts that walked beside her every day. Carefully, she folded the photograph and slipped it inside a battered leather journal resting beside her. A journal filled with fragments of memories, half-written letters she'd never sent, tactical notes, and the poetry of a soldier's quiet soul. Her gaze drifted slowly toward the burn scar on her left shoulder, faint beneath the fabric of her shirt, but ever present. A constant reminder of the fire that had changed her life forever. The pain was dull now, but never truly gone. It was a mark of survival and loss, etched deep beneath the skin. Today, though, was different. Today, she was ready. Ready to return to the gym. The walk there was slow, deliberate. Each step was grounded, steady, as if reconnecting with a part of herself she'd long kept hidden. The city around her bustled on, unaware of the small personal battle unfolding within her. The familiar buzz of the gym greeted her like an old friend. The muted thuds of punching bags, the scrape of gloves against mats, the low murmur of focused training. But something had shifted. The air no longer carried the tension of competition or mockery. It held a quiet respect. Reyes changed into her gear with practiced precision. Her hands moved confidently, tying laces, adjusting wraps, a ritual of discipline and readiness. Each motion was measured, deliberate, a silent preparation not just for training, but for reclaiming herself. She stepped onto the mats where Mercer was already warming up, his expression sober, stripped of former arrogance. Their eyes met briefly, a nod passed between them, no need for words. This was a mutual understanding, a silent agreement. The training began. Slow, methodical. Every strike, block, and movement was a conversation between two warriors, a dialogue of respect, skill, and learning. There was no need for showmanship or bravado, just presence. Midway through the session, Mercer paused, wiping sweat from his brow, eyes searching hers. "Your discipline? It's something else," he said quietly. Reyes met his gaze, calm but resolute. "It's what keeps me standing." After the session ended, Rico approached, standing a respectful distance. "You coming back tomorrow?" he asked. Reyes hesitated, a faint smile touching her lips. Then she nodded, quietly but firmly. "Yes, I'm done hiding." In that simple affirmation, the quiet veteran reclaimed a piece of herself, not through noise or spectacle, but through steady resolve, courage, and the willingness to be truly seen. The weeks that followed brought a quiet transformation, not only for Reyes, but for everyone around her. The gym, once just a place for competition and bravado, evolved into a sanctuary where respect and silent strength took root, growing steady beneath the surface. Reyes's presence was calm, steady, unshakable. She trained not to prove anything to the world, but to remind herself who she was beneath the weight of scars, memories, and loss. Every movement she made carried the grace born from years of hard-fought battles. Every strike was precise, every defense deliberate, every breath measured and controlled. It was as if the rhythm of her training echoed the unspoken language of survival, a dance with shadows no one else saw. Mercer, who had once been brash and dismissive, had become a genuine student of that quiet power. He watched her not with judgment or skepticism, but with awe and a deep desire to learn something far beyond technique. He wanted to understand the resilience that springs from having survived not only physical blows but the battles within. One late afternoon, as the sun cast long, golden shadows through the gym's wide windows, Mercer approached Reyes again. The usual clatter of training had died down, replaced by the subtle sounds of soft footfalls and heavy breaths. This time, Mercer didn't ask about fighting or skill. He asked something far deeper. How do you carry it? All of it. His voice was low, vulnerable. Reyes paused, her eyes reflecting a lifetime of pain, loss, and hope intertwined. She considered the question carefully before answering. You carry it because you have no choice, she said quietly, voice steady but heavy. Because what else is there? Her words hung in the air, a solemn echo that seemed to still the very atmosphere of the gym. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. There are battles no one sees. Battles inside us, with memories that don't fade, with losses that never heal, with the silence left behind after the noise of war is gone. Mercer nodded slowly, the weight of her honesty sinking into his bones. For the first time, he understood that strength wasn't about the fight anyone could see, but about the quiet endurance of what lay beneath. From that day forward, the gym was never the same. It wasn't just a place to measure who could hit harder or move faster. It became a place where the invisible burdens each person carried were recognized, respected, and honored. Reyes, once just the quiet newcomer, became something more. She became a symbol, a testament to quiet resilience, unspoken courage, and a strength that needed no loud declaration to be undeniable. Her story wasn't shouted from the rooftops. It was lived in every precise movement, every silent moment, every steady breath. And for those who watched closely, it was a lesson in what it truly means to be strong. The gym's usual hum dimmed as a figure stepped inside, tall, stern, and unmistakably commanding. Colonel Harris was a legend in these circles, a retired military officer whose reputation for discipline and unerring judgment preceded him. Word had spread that he was here to observe the week's training sessions, but few expected the impact his presence would have. He moved through the gym with purposeful steps, each one echoing authority. His eyes scanned the room with a practiced, cold precision, taking in fighters, gauging skill, and assessing character. When his gaze finally settled on Reyes, a hush seemed to fall over the space. She stood quietly near the mats, her posture calm yet alert, carrying herself with a quiet confidence that even the colonel couldn't overlook. Mercer leaned in to whisper to Rico, voice low and tinged with awe. That's Colonel Harris, one of the toughest men I've ever known. Harris's footsteps carried him directly to Reyes. He stopped just before her, scrutinizing every inch of her stance, the way she breathed, the way her muscles held themselves in silent readiness. His expression was unreadable, a blend of curiosity, skepticism, and something deeper. Your form is precise, he said at last, his voice low, measured, and carrying the weight of a lifetime of experience. Reyes dipped her chin in acknowledgement. Thank you, sir. Then his gaze drifted down, catching sight of a faint outline beneath the sleeve of her shirt, the familiar silhouette of the trident tattoo, a symbol etched into the skin of Navy SEALs, a mark not given lightly. The room seemed to still completely, the air thick with unspoken tension. Where did you serve? Colonel Harris asked quietly, eyes never leaving hers. Reyes hesitated for only a moment before answering simply, SEAL Team 6. The colonel's face shifted, subtle at first, but unmistakable. Recognition flashed through his eyes, replaced swiftly by something heavier, more respectful. I didn't realize we had a warrior among us, he said softly, voice barely above a whisper. A wave of silence swept through the gym. The earlier skepticism, the mockery, the doubt, all dissolved in that one moment, replaced with awe and a profound respect. Without hesitation, Colonel Harris extended his hand, a gesture as formal as it was heartfelt. Welcome back, he said. Reyes met his gaze steadily and accepted the handshake. The contact was brief but powerful, the passing of a torch, the final acknowledgement of battles fought in shadows and wars carried quietly. In that moment, the last barrier shattered. The quiet veteran was no longer invisible, no longer just a woman in a gym. She was a warrior, honored, recognized, and finally seen. The gym felt different now, charged with a quiet energy that hadn't been there before. It was deeper, heavier, yet somehow lighter at the same time. Reyes could sense it the moment she stepped back onto the mats after Colonel Harris's recognition. The stares she received were no longer filled with skepticism or doubt. Instead, they held a newfound respect, not just for the woman standing before them, but for the story she carried silently within. For the first time in a long time, Reyes felt the weight of her past shift from a looming shadow to a steady legacy she could carry with quiet pride. That evening, as the last fighters wrapped up their routines and the gym began to empty, Reyes stayed behind. The usual clatter of equipment, the sharp breaths, and footsteps gave way to a calm hush. Alone in the dimming light, she began to unpack her bag slowly, deliberately. Her fingers brushed over familiar items, a pair of worn gloves, a small first aid kit, and then something tucked inside a hidden pocket, a small, worn photograph. It was the same image she had carried for years, a unit photo, faces etched with determination, youth, and resolve. Some of those faces had been lost to time and fate, names spoken only in whispers now. The photo was a fragile thread connecting her to a past that had shaped every step she took. Her thoughts drifted to those men and women she had fought beside, the ones who had given everything without expectation of fanfare or recognition. The bond forged in war was unbreakable, even across the distance of years and silence. Reyes pulled out a dog tag from her pocket, its metal worn and dented by time. The cold weight of it was like a lifeline to a world she missed but had left behind, a world of missions, loss, and a fierce loyalty few could understand. She held it tightly, the smooth edges grounding her in the moment. Her phone buzzed softly beside her, breaking the stillness. The screen glowed with a message from Mercer. You inspired more than you know. A faint, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Closing her eyes, Reyes took a slow breath, feeling the legacy she carried. Heavy, yes, but also steady and unyielding. It was a reminder that true strength wasn't measured in noise or applause, but in the quiet moments when you choose to carry on. When you choose to face your battles, inside and out, without surrender. And in those moments, you reclaim not just your dignity, but your very soul. As days turned into weeks, the atmosphere within the gym continued to shift subtly but irrevocably. The boisterous chatter and clanging sounds of competitive bravado gave way to a more mindful silence whenever Reyes entered. The fighters who had once sneered, who had dismissed her as just another civilian, now found themselves watching with a quiet admiration. It wasn't just the skill in her movements. It was the weight she carried in her presence, the depth beneath her calm, measured exterior. Mercer, in particular, underwent the most visible change. His usual swagger, that cocky confidence that had once been his trademark, was tempered by a growing respect. The rivalry that had once sparked between them, fueled by ego and misunderstanding, gradually faded. What emerged instead was a shared camaraderie, forged not in competition, but in mutual recognition. Their sparring sessions evolved as well. They were no longer battles for dominance or displays of bravado. Instead, they became lessons in discipline and resilience. Every exchange was a conversation, precise, controlled, and deliberate. Neither sought to overpower the other, but to learn, to grow. One humid afternoon, after an especially grueling session of drills and footwork, Mercer wiped the sweat from his brow and caught his breath beside Reyes. The quiet weight of exhaustion hung between them. "You ever miss it?" he asked, nodding toward the dog tags that hung steadily from her neck. Worn, dinted metal that bore the names of those who had been more than comrades. Reyes paused, her fingers tracing the cold surface of the tags with a tenderness that betrayed the hardness of the metal. "Every day," she admitted softly, her voice steady but thick with unspoken grief. Mercer nodded slowly, the realization settling in. "I can't imagine what you've been through," he said quietly. "But I get it. The things you carry." There was a silence after that, heavy, yet comfortable, as if both understood that some wounds were not meant to be spoken aloud. Reyes lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes with a quiet intensity. "It's the unspoken bond," she said, "between those who've been tested, who've faced things most people never will. You don't have to explain it. Others might never understand, but those who've been there, they know." Mercer gave a slow, genuine smile this time, one stripped of ego and filled with respect. "And now, you've taught me that strength isn't just physical," he said. "It's about heart, about endurance, about carrying things no one else can see." Their eyes locked for a moment, and in that shared glance lay a deep respect, earned through hardship, through mutual understanding, and through silent acknowledgement of battles both visible and hidden. The gym had become something more than a place to train or compete. It had become a sanctuary, a place to heal, to learn, and to honor those battles that the world often overlooked. And for Reyes, it was a quiet reminder that sometimes strength is less about the noise you make and more about the resilience you carry inside. The late afternoon sun poured through the gym's large windows, casting long, golden shadows across the worn mats. The air was thick with the familiar scent of sweat, leather, and determination, a mix that spoke of countless hours spent pushing bodies and minds beyond limits. Reyes and Mercer stood facing each other, gloves on, preparing for what would be their final round together. But there was no tension, no need to prove dominance. This was something else entirely. Reyes's voice broke the silence, calm and measured. "Remember," she said quietly, locking eyes with Mercer, "it's not about power. It's about control." Mercer nodded, the cockiness replaced by sincere focus. He adjusted his stance, mirroring her steady calm. They moved together, a fluid dance born from discipline and experience. Each strike was precise, each block deliberate, not a wasted motion, not a needless show of force. The rhythm between them was almost conversational, a language built on respect and understanding rather than aggression. For a moment, the rest of the gym seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, connected through every movement, every breath, every shared history they silently acknowledged. As the round drew to a close, Mercer lowered his gloves, his breath steady but heavy with effort. He looked at Reyes, eyes filled with something deeper than admiration, gratitude. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for teaching me more than just how to fight." Reyes allowed herself a faint smile, the kind that spoke volumes without words. "The hardest battles aren't in the ring," she replied softly. "They're the ones inside." They both knew the truth in that statement, the invisible struggles that scarred more deeply than any physical blow. The gym was quiet now, the echo of their session hanging in the air like a lingering lesson. As they gathered their gear to leave, the silence between them was comfortable, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. It was a moment of mutual respect and understanding that transcended words. For Reyes, this journey wasn't about proving herself to anyone else. It was about reclaiming her story, her strength, and her place in a world that often overlooked quiet courage. She carried that dignity not with loud declarations or spectacle, but with steady resolve and the unshakable presence of someone who had faced darkness and emerged unbroken. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and deep blue. And inside, Reyes walked out of the gym, not as the woman who had been underestimated and mocked, but as a veteran whose quiet strength had spoken louder than any words ever could. The gym was nearly empty as Reyes carefully gathered her belongings. The fading light from the overhead bulbs cast long shadows across the worn mats, mingling with the soft hum of the evening's quiet. Outside, the world went on, unaware of the quiet battle that had just unfolded within these four walls. She paused for a moment by the exit, her hand resting lightly on the cool metal of the doorframe. Her eyes swept slowly across the gym, taking in the space where so much had changed, where skeptics had become believers, where silence had turned to respect, where she had reclaimed something more than a fight, her dignity. The mats where Mercer had once mocked her now held the memory of their shared lessons. Lessons not about power or showmanship, but about control, discipline, and quiet strength. Faces she had once thought indifferent or dismissive now carried something different. A newfound respect, often unspoken but unmistakable. It was in the nods exchanged, the subtle shifts in posture, the quiet moments of acknowledgement. No words were necessary. The silence between them spoke volumes. Her dog tags rested heavily against her chest beneath her shirt, a tangible link to a past filled with sacrifice, resilience, and unyielding strength. The cold metal had been worn smooth from years of wear, a reminder of comrades lost, battles fought, and promises kept. Reyes stepped outside into the cool evening air. The breeze brushed gently against her face, carrying with it the scent of distant rain and the faint hum of the city settling into night. For the first time in a long while, a sense of peace settled over her. Her shadow stretched long behind her in the fading twilight, a silent testament to the battles fought and won, both seen and unseen. This story wasn't about a single fight in a gym, nor about shocking a crowd with sudden skill. It was about something deeper, reclaiming one's dignity through truth, presence, and unwavering resolve. It was about the quiet victories, the ones that leave no scars but reshape the soul. In that stillness, Reyes found herself again, not defined by the judgments or underestimations of others, but by the strength and resilience she carried within, a strength that no one could take away. The journey was far from over, but tonight marked an important chapter closed, a chapter where silence was no longer a burden, but a badge of honor. With steady steps, she walked away from the gym, not as a woman waiting to prove herself, but as a warrior who had already won, quietly, without fanfare, but with undeniable presence. And in that silent victory, Reyes was finally free. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.